Chapter 278, As Expected of a First-Year Dragon. 4 Complete Cultivation Cycles. Zhu started cultivating at midnight on Tuesday. He continued to cultivate for 36 hours. After 4 complete cultivation cycles, he finally managed to train one of the microscopic perception genetic base points into a level 2 silver state. He had consumed a total of 8 bottles of level D energy restoration elixir. Zhu had activated all 24 genetic base points in the second level of the Mind Concentration Foundation forging technique. Although he did not obtain any additional abilities, the increase in his mind power was real. He could already use 2 bottles of level D energy restoration elixirs in 1 cultivation cycle. However, the consumption of strengthening this microscopic perception genetic base point to level 2 silver was the most when Zhu was strengthening level 2 genetic base points. He had only used 31 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs to strengthen his main genetic base point of mental perception to level 2. He had used 4.5 cultivation cycles when he strengthened his 9th reaction type genetic base point to level 2. Zhu consumed 41 bottles of level E energy restoration elixir in less than 4 cultivation cycles. However, he had actually consumed a total of 80 bottles of level E energy restoration elixirs to strengthen his microscopic perception genetic base point to level 2. Compared to the previous genetic base points that he had strengthened to level 2, the consumption was almost double. This change caught Zhu's attention. He carefully analyzed the possible reasons. In the end, he came to a conclusion. The more genetic base points that formed a genetic ability chain, the greater the consumption of genetic base points to level 2. If there were already level 2 genetic base points on this genetic ability chain, the consumption would also increase. Why did he get to this conclusion? In the beginning, he only had 6 mental perception genetic base points. He consumed the least when he strengthened these genetic base points. He only used 31 bottles of level E energy restoration elixir. There were a total of 9 reaction-type genetic base points. Zhu had consumed a total of 41 bottles of level E energy restoration elixir when he was strengthening his 9th reaction-type genetic base point. This time, under the introspection, the strengthened microscopic perception genetic base points formed a large genetic ability chain with the 6 mental perception genetic base points. At this moment, there were a total of 11 genetic base points in this mental perception's genetic ability chain. The last genetic base point had already been strengthened to level 2. During the strengthening process, the genetic base point that had been strengthened to level 2 had a high percentage of energy. This should be the reason why he had consumed 8 bottles of level D energy restoration elixirs to strengthen his microscopic perception genetic base point. Zhu would record this conclusion in his notebook and verify it in his future cultivation. If that was the case, would his microscopic perception abilities be greatly enhanced after he strengthened his genetic base points to level 2? The answer was yes. Previously, it would have taken him more than 2 minutes to clearly see the 6th diagram, which had a size of 0.001 nanometers. Now, Zhu had seen it in a second. What was even more shocking was that when Zhu tried to get a clear look at the core area of the 7th diagram, which had a size of 0.0001 nanometers, 1 minute had passed. It only took him a minute to see it clearly. He looked again. It only took a few seconds for him to see it clearly. Compared to the previous sensing process, after strengthening a microscopic perception genetic base point to level 2, the increase in the microscopic perception ability was very large. It was the word E. It was similar to Zhu's previous judgment. Yu Jun Zhu Jiao Gao Di, Tien, the rough idea is desire to compete with you on the high and low. It was very likely that it was the idea of the senior who created the school of general senses that had included every word in this short sentence into the core area of the 7 diagrams. However, Zhu did not look for Kukingshan immediately. Instead, he began another test. According to his observations in his introspective state, the 5 genetic base points that were related to microscopic perception had formed a large genetic ability chain with the 6 genetic base points that were directly connected to his mental perception. In that case, would Zhu's mental perception be greatly enhanced after his microscopic perception genetic base point was strengthened to level 2? There was no doubt that it had been enhanced. Zhu Tui had recorded it when he activated the 5 microscopic perception genetic base points. Before he activated these 5 microscopic perception genetic base points, Zhu Tui's accurate perception had just reached 16 meters. His fuzzy perception range was 32 meters. It had increased by another meter compared to when he had strengthened his main mental perception genetic base point to level 2. The increase of 1 meter came from the substantial increase in his mind power after he activated the second level of his genetic base points. As a result, the distance of his mental perception had increased. After activating 5 microscopic perception genetic base points and forming a large genetic ability chain with the original 6 mental perception genetic base points, according to Zhu Tui's records, the range of his mental perception had been increased to 17 meters. The range of his blurry perception had reached 34 meters. He had activated 5 genetic base points and only increased the distance by 1 meter. The increase was very limited. It should be that every genetic base point affected an ability in a specific direction, even if it was on the same genetic ability chain. However, after strengthening a genetic base point to level 2, how much would the range of his mental perception increase? In the dormitory, Zhu Tui released his mental perception into the distance. He calculated the distance of his mental perception with the length of the floor tiles. 18 meters, close to 19 meters. It was almost 19 meters away. It had increased by at least 10%. As expected, strengthening the genetic base points on the same genetic chain to level 2, even if it involved collateral abilities, would have a certain effect on the main abilities. An increase of 10% in the range of his mental perception was not bad. At this point, Zhu Tui's blurry mental perception range had reached 38 meters. It meant that he had a combat radius of 38 meters. If his strength continued to increase in the future and he strengthened his genetic base points that were related to his mental perception to level 2, he would be able to increase the radius of his mind power to more than 100 meters. That would be extremely terrifying. At 2:30 p.m. on Wednesday, Zhu Tui once again arrived at the research center of the School of General Senses. Zhu Tui was riding an environmental bicycle today. Under the introspection state, the color of the bones in the broken leg was no longer much different. It had completely recovered. Zhu Tui smiled and greeted Zhao Yulin, Shang Sheng, Lu Peng, Wu Sheng, and the others who had discovered him as he passed through the small mountain, the lake, the listening platform, and the small forest. Zhu Tui got to know them on Monday. According to Ku Qingshan's introduction, there were more than 70 abilities in the entire School of General Senses. However, there were only 13 students in the 1st to 4th years who had met the requirements for the microscopic perception ability. Currently, there are only 6 people in school. Ku Qingshan's request was that there were few people and they had to be united. They also had to exchange their cultivation insights and strive to reach a higher level. Therefore, Zhu Tui met all 6 students from the School of General Senses. However, he was far away from the training area. He merely waved his hand in greeting. "Hey, what do you guys think? Zhu Tui is a first-year dragon. It's said that his cultivation talent is very shocking. What do you guys think his cultivation speed will be like in our school?" The lively Shang Sheng asked. To be able to become a dragon and tiger, talent and perseverance are indispensable. He might be faster than us, Zhao Yulin said. How much faster can he be than us? A female voice sounded. It was Wu Sheng, who was sitting in the grass. 20%? It shouldn't be more than half, right? Zhao Yulin speculated. His cultivation speed is half of ours. That's impressive. Shang Sheng was a little envious. We don't know that yet. Lu Peng interrupted. He must have encountered a problem with his cultivation of microscopic perception. How many diagrams do you think he has cultivated in 2.5 days? A specific question immediately made the few people curious. The second one, right? It took me a week to see the second diagram clearly. It's only been less than 3 days, Wu Sheng said. I think so too. It took me more than 8 days to see the second diagram, Shang Sheng said. It might be the second diagram. The third diagram is also very likely. Zhao Yulin was more mature. Lu Peng pursed his lips and did not comment further. If Zhu Tui's progress was to diagrams, his speed would be about the same as his. Back then, he had finished looking at 2 diagrams in 2 days. If he was temporarily stuck in the 3rd diagram, his talent might not be stronger than Liu Peng's. If I didn't choose the School of General Senses, would I have been able to obtain the title of Year 1 Dragon or Tiger 2 years ago? Such a thought suddenly appeared in Liu Peng's mind. Ku Qingshan was very happy to see Zhu Tui in his office. He came to look for him on the 3rd day after receiving the microscopic perception cultivation map. He must have encountered a problem with his cultivation. However, this was a good thing. This meant that Zhu Tui was cultivating diligently. He had already completely entered the School of General Senses, putting aside the advantage that Zhu Tui had in his cultivation. Ku Qingshan was also very happy that he had gained another true student in the School of General Senses. Furthermore, he was a student with powerful scientific research abilities. Zhu Tui, you're here. Sit. I'm a kinder person than old Luo. If you have any problems, just tell me directly. I can give you my heart, liver, and lungs without holding anything back. It's like this, Mr. Ku. You said that by cultivating to the 4th diagram, I would be able to obtain the method to sense the original quantum frequency and undergo perception instantiation cultivation, right? Zhu Tui asked. Did you see the 4th diagram clearly? Ku Qingshan reacted quickly and immediately realized something. Otherwise, Zhu Tui would not have come all the way here to confirm this question. Wouldn't that be a waste of time? A thought flashed through Ku Qingshan's mind. It had only been 2.5 days, right? Yet he had completed 4 diagrams. What a genius! That's right, Mr. Ku. The 4th picture should have the word Jun, right? Zhu Tui said. Ku Qingshan's eyes lit up. The 4th picture was indeed the word Jun. His deduction was correct. Zhu Tui's abilities in this area were truly outstanding. In the School of General Senses, 3 diagrams in 3 days were considered geniuses. Now, Zhu Tui had seen the 4 diagrams clearly in less than 3 days, as expected of a first-year dragon. He indeed had monstrous talent. He had picked up a treasure. Ku Qingshan cleared his throat and organized his words. It's the word Jun. According to your progress, you can indeed proceed with the next step of cultivation to sense the original quantum frequency. However, as a pioneer, I have to give you a very pertinent suggestion. It would be best if you could spend some more time to look at the 5th diagram and improve your microscopic perception ability. Then, you can cultivate to sense the original quantum frequency. At that time, you will get twice the result with half the effort. Ku Qingshan said. Zhu Tui nodded when he heard that. Ku Qingshan's suggestion was indeed a good teacher. Mr. Ku, if I'm not mistaken, the 5th diagram should be Zhao, right? Zhu Tui suddenly said. Ku Qingshan, who was drinking from a thermos flask, could not help but tremble when he heard Zhu Tui's words. Then, he turned his head around and glared at Zhu Tui. You saw the 5th diagram clearly? It's only been 2.5 days, right? Ku Qingshan was shocked by Zhu Tui.